Hello there. Let me ask you a question. What are you looking at right now? A blank screen, maybe? Nothingness, perhaps? No. What you're actually looking at is the first issue of Thor, written by Donny Cates. And yes, this is the actual cover for the comic, not a printing error or something like that. This is what is known as a variant cover, and the more we look into variant covers, the weirder things get. Chapter 1. What are variant covers? A variant cover, as you could probably infer from the name, is a version of a comic that has a different cover to the original. For example, this is Darth Vader issue 22, released on April 13th of this year. It is also the original cover for the issue. Alongside this cover, there is also a 1 in 25 Ienco variant, a Gist variant A Gist variant B, and a Renault Traitor of the Dawn variant. These variant covers are all released at the same time, and serve the purpose of boosting sales by appealing to the gotta-have-em-all nature of many collectors. The number of variants that a book receives is largely dependent on what comic it actually is. For example, the Darth Vader comic I just showed has 4 variants, whereas a bigger issue like, for example, Detective Comics 1000 has up to 84 different variants. With that information under our belt, let's run through a few basic types of variant covers. Just like the Thor cover I showed at the beginning, this Batman and Superman cover is what is known as a blank variant. It is literally just a fully white cover, sometimes it can also be other colours as well. This type of variant has grown in popularity in recent years. A virgin variant is a cover which has no text on it, just the artwork. Basically, imagine these two Superwoman covers but without the text on the sides. These variants are often very highly desired and as a result very expensive because they are seen as being cleaner than a cover with lots of text on it. Collector's edition comics, such as this one, have a bunch of anthology stories in them that are packaged into one bigger issue. Reprint covers act as a way to get classic and desired books out there at a cheaper price. For example, Marvel and DC have their True Believers and Dollar Comics series respectively. Some popular comics also have second, third, and fourth printings, sometimes with different covers such as this Spider-Man cover. And the final type of variant I want to talk about are incentive variants. Also known as ratio variants, they come in many different forms, such as 1 in 10, 1 in 25, 1 in 50, 1 in 100, etc, etc, etc. And in my opinion, this is where we start to uncover the scummy nature of variant covers. Take a look at this Darth Vader issue 1 cover. This isn't the original cover, but the 1 in 10 movie variant cover. What this basically means is that in order for a comic book shop to order this cover, so that they can sell it obviously, they need to buy 10 copies of the original, comparatively less desirable cover from the distributor. So, if a comic book shop wants to get their hands on a rare 1 in 100 variant, which they know they're going to sell, they need to order 100 copies of another book. Sometimes it isn't even the original cover, but a completely separate comic that the distributor knows is not going to sell that much. Essentially, the comic shop has to buy truckloads of a less popular comic in the hopes that they break even by selling the rarer variant cover. The distributor creates demand for the incentive variant by putting it behind a paywall. And comic shops have to comply because otherwise they can't buy the rare variant, so they literally don't have the same product to sell as their competitors. What this creates is a guessing game for comic shop owners who have to risk buying a bunch of lesser comics in order to unlock a rarer one. What this creates is a market that is cutthroat and a business model that is ruthless towards small shops. I think by now I've established that variant covers aren't just about looking at pretty artwork, but that there is something worse at play. With that in mind, let's look back in time. Chapter 2. Origins and Speculator Boom. The first ever variant cover as we know it today was introduced in 1986 with 2 different versions of Man of Steel issue 1. This variant cover of Man of Steel was intended to help encourage a boost in sales, and what it ended up doing was starting a massive trend in comics where more and more publishers began to do the same. Fast forward to 1991, and X-Men issue 1 is released with 5 different covers. This is one of the major reasons that led this issue to being the highest selling comic book of all time, with around 8.2 million copies sold for this single issue. People were crazy about comics in general around this time, and the massive influx of variant covers helped to appease the craving of collectors. This is where we arrive at the speculator boom around the mid-90s. As the craze for popular superhero media was on the rise, so too was the market for comic books. People saw potential in comics as a source of income and started to buy books en masse. You know how you read stories about these old comics being sold for hundreds of thousands, even millions? Well, that's because those comics are actually rare. There are very few of them left in the world because people at the time didn't realize they were worth any money, so they didn't care for them. However, in the 90s, people started to hoard comics and publishers, capitalizing on the interest, started churning out more and more books with more and more variant covers to satiate the demand. Publishers even started making cash grab comics such as The Death of Superman, which were effectively like clickbait of the 90s, just because they knew that people would buy it regardless of the actual content of the book. People thought that they could become millionaires by selling their comics. But the thing is, when there are thousands of copies of a comic out there, regardless of whether it has a shiny foil cover, the comic becomes worthless. And so, the speculator bubble burst. The industry was ruined, and many small comic shops were put out of business after being stuck with thousands of comics that they were unable to sell. The market crashed. Chapter 3. Poison? Fast forward to today, and the comic book industry has largely managed to stabilize itself. In fact, there are even signs of it somewhat growing. But there are still many problems that the industry faces, such as the fact that individual comic stores themselves are struggling to stay afloat, and instead of trying to engage with new business models, or try and attract new customers, or even fully capitalize on the popularity of the movies, the comic book industry seems more preoccupied in churning out countless variant editions of the same comic. Don't get me wrong, there is some progress being made in terms of evolving the industry, especially in terms of writing, but it largely feels like too little, too late. And this is coming from an avid comic book fan. I mean, comic books have given me so much joy in my life, and my local comic book shop has given me some incredibly fond memories and experiences. So it hurts, it really does, when I see the industry slowly poisoning itself. This is book 1 of The Batman 3 Jokers. Looking at its variants, we can see a 1 in 100 black and white variant, a 1 in 25 green variant, a second printing 1 in 25 Joker Shark black and white variant, a premium variant cover A Red Hood variant, a cover B Batman variant, a second printing Joker Shark variant, a premium variant cover B Joker Fish variant, and a premium variant cover C Joker Bomb variant. This is crazy to me. It's insane. If we look at the 3 Jokers book 3, we can see a 1 in 450 incentive variant. Imagine a small comic book shop having to order 450 comics just to get a single incentive variant. Imagine the pressure that puts on that shop. Remember that blank Thor cover I showed at the start of the video? Well, that comic also has a 1 in 500 incentive variant. Oh yeah, on top of that, it also has all of these variants as well. I just find this weird. When an industry has such little faith in its product that it has to resort to such petty tactics, I find it insane. It isn't a sustainable business model, and it's sad for me to see an industry I love slowly poisoning itself. Look, I'm not saying that I hate the idea of variant covers. It's the oversaturation that I hate. The fact that the industry has a crazy obsession over variants so that they can continue to ring the pockets of existing collectors instead of actually attracting new fans. Variant covers are just one slice of the pie as to the many problems that are plaguing the comic book industry. And it's interesting to see how an industry that has lasted for so many decades is struggling to grasp onto longevity, and is instead clinging to cheap gimmicks in order to boost sales. I guess you could say that the comic book industry always judges a book by its cover. Thanks for watching.